Yo, holy smokes, we are back with another one. It's your boy Jose Rocks, and today we're going to be doing a little bit different of a tier list. So this tier list is going to be, pretty similar to the ones that I usually do, but we're going to be ranking the cores in the format, right? And this template actually has some of the best cores in the format, but I want to rank them as far as how good I think they are. And there's 16 total, so we're gonna put 5 in each category, and to top it off, we're gonna have what I think is the best core in the current format right now, right? So if you guys like this type of content, go ahead and subscribe, turn on those post notifications. We just came back from a vacation, just got back from Miami, and it was amazing. So I did take a little break from the content. I know you guys have probably been missing some of the videos and the battle videos, things like that, but I'm back now, and I'm gonna get right back into it and make sure that you guys get that content out daily. But let's go ahead and get started with this list. To start it off, we have 4 categories. We have best cores, strong cores, consistent cores, and strong but predictable cores, right? And like I said, I'm not ranking these in any specific order. I'm just ranking them based off how I feel like they fit these categories. But the one that I do put in best core is going to be what I feel like is the best overall core out of all of these 16 cores. So to start off the strong but predictable, the first one I want to go with is this is probably going to be a little bit obvious, but it's going to be the Weezing and Toadscrew teams. Now these teams, while Wolfie did popularize this strategy when you would see it before, you almost just expect Weezing to turn off Toadscrew's Mycelium Might ability, which makes like priority, not priority moves, which makes support moves or status moves go last, right? And it turns it off so like you have like a fast spore, right? Which, I mean, you can really do that with Breloom, but Toadscrew has a little bit more unique typing with the ground and grass, and also like being immune to like electric type attacks. I think this could work better in a restricted format with Miraidon in it, right? So Miraidon is one of the world champions, and now that this has been like discovered, I think more people can like try it out. And then you also cut off Miraidon's electric terrain, which is really cool. But what Wolfie popularized was using the Choice Specs Galarian Weezing with Acid Spray from the Toadscrew, which is a really strong strategy now. But almost, it's either that set or it's going to be, the which I think is a little bit worse set with the, Weezing just being defensive and Toadscrew trying to put you to sleep. But the more offensive core makes this core a little bit stronger, and it is actually viable in this format. But it is predictable, right? So it's strong, but like I said, it's predictable. Most people will know what you're going to be trying to do with it, and you really have to play out of your mind to try to win those games, right? But it is fun to use. Next, we have Dondozo. Dondozo's also going to be a really strong core. As always, you know what it's going to do. You know that eventually they're going to get to a point where they combine Testagiri with Dondozo. So almost always, if they have like a Haze Dragonite, Haze Primarina, Clear Smile Amoonguss, they're going to bring it, and they're going to bring it in the back. Or even a Murkrow, right? If they have it on their team, they're going to bring it to the Dondozo matchup. Now, you could get a little, mix it up a little bit and go with like Dondozo and Testagiri, go with the Storm Drain on Testagiri and not combine them. But I think that leads it into like being a little bit gimmicky, and it hasn't been proven that type of Testagiri set is actually good in this format right now, because while there is a couple of good water types like Primarina, Palafen's not that common, Basculegion, it's just not a necessity to have like Storm Drain right now, right? Because waters are not running the format. So maybe in the future, Testagiri have a little bit more viability with the set outside of Commander, but for right now, it is a pretty strong core, but it is still really predictable. Next, we have Torkoal Lilligant. Almost always, you're going to be running the Chlorophyll ability on Lilligant and not the Hustle, but that doesn't mean it's bad, right? It's just predictable, but it's still really strong. It's able to just annihilate some teams that they don't have a really good answer into Torkoal Lilligant. And this Lilligant with the fighting coverage is actually really strong, able to hit like a lot of different things in the format. And pressuring with Sleep, also pressuring with like Encore, pressuring with Close Combat, pressuring with Leaf Blade, pressuring with Ghost Terror, and Sleep Powder is just always really threatening, right? And then if they just get the turn wrong after you Eruption, can always sweep your opponents too. So it is predictable, but it's still pretty strong. Next we have Hatterene and Indeedee. This is also a really predictable strategy. Do you know what they're going to try to do with Hatterene and Indeedee? They're going to try to set up Trick Room, or they're going to just try to set up Trick Room and Indeedee and attack with Hatterene, right? it can be pretty predictable, but it's still like you have to know how to deal with it in order to beat it, right? So in that case, I do think that it's pretty, predictable, but it's still a strong core because, again, if you don't have answers into hard trick room, then you can just lose the match from that point, right? And that's what I feel like is a really cool strategy. And last but not least, we have Delphox and Mel Ndidi. And this strategy is also pretty predictable in a way that Delphox is actually going to be running like either Choice Specs or Life Orb, and they're just going to try to beat you with like fast Expanding Force, right? You see these two, Expanding Force is coming. It's just about how you deal with it, what type of dark types you have on your team, what type of steel types. Steel types don't necessarily fully beat this core because Delphox is a fire type, just like Armorers, right? So it can hit those steel types with fire type coverage, right? You really need dark types to beat this type of core. But even that's not always guaranteed because if you build a solid team around this with like fairies, then you're able to do pretty well into dark types. But these are going to be our 5 strong but predictable cores that I think. Let me know if you guys agree with this. Leave a comment below if you think that another core should be in this predictable thing. But I kind of want to even it out and put 5 in each. So I will go with 5 for this first one. Next, we're going to have consistent cores. These consistent cores are cores that I feel like when you play with them, you have a lot of success, and your opponents necessarily don't have a lot of answers into it. And they do have answers into it. You can kind of like player difference or just, use your skill to kind of win those games. So the first one I'm going to go with is Volcarona teams. So Volcarona teams, when they have like a King Gambit or, like the Big Six team that I made with the Gengar and the Paldean Tauros, Rillaboom, and Clefable. Those teams are really cool to use and really strong, and they have a lot of good matchups into a lot of things in the format, but they give you answers into everything, right? So you have answers into Trick Room, you have answers into Side Spam, you have with Rillaboom, right? You have answers into Tailwind, you have answers into Trick Room. Like, you just have all these different answers into different cores, so it's really consistent, and they usually function around Volcarona being like the strongest mon on those teams, because if it does get set up, then it's very hard to deal with. Next, we're going to have what I feel like Gholdengo and Clefable. Gholdengo is the best Pokemon in this format, in my opinion, and I think it is really consistent, right? Using it with Clefable. Clefable gives you a consistent answer into things like King Gambit, which most King Gambit are running like Black Glasses Terra Dark, and Clefable, sorry, I always get that name mixed up. Clefable ruins that strategy, right, and allows Gholdengo to kind of thrive and just get free nasty plots. So it's a really cool strategy. Most of these Gholdengo that are going to be used with this core always are going to be like nasty plot, right? You really don't want to run choice specs with this because it's not like you can helping hand your Gholdengo because it's immune to helping hand, and you really want to just be setting up nasty plot, be able to protect and like pivot in like fake out users and stuff like that. So I think it is a really consistent core, and it's really hard for a lot of teams to deal with. Next, we have this Primarina, Electabuzz, and Rillaboom core. Now, this core is something that's been popularized in like the Dortmund regionals. A lot of people were using this core. A lot of people are using Magmar as well on a similar team, but it's really strong. It gives you redirection, gives you fake out, it gives you haze, and just both, and gives you a lot of answers into like a lot of different things, right? It helps you stall out Tailwind, helps you stall out Trick Room, helps you deal with Dondozo. It helps you deal with a lot of, the predictable cores that are in the tier below it. It gives you a lot of answers to that stuff. Primarina is like the best fairy in this format. Electabuzz is arguably the best electric type, and Rillaboom, you can argue, is one of the best grass types. It's either that or like Amoonguss. But as you see, like, these are some of like the best Pokemon in the format in their typings, right? So putting them together is gonna, make for a really cool, balanced, and flourishing team. And even adding Incineroar to this core just gives you just a little bit more balance for it, right? So it is really strong. Next, we're gonna have Garchomp and Tyranitar. This is a really consistent core because Tyranitar, as you know, even with this, abysmal typing with being Dark and Rock, is still really good into every format that it comes to. It's not like a tier king, like a format king, but it's always really good, and it just garners respect. It always activates sand teams. It always really good with the, the gens mechanics, whether it's Dynamax, whether it's Mega Evolution, whether it's Z-Moves, whether it's Terrestrialization, which might be the best mechanic for it, just to get rid of that typing. And sometimes when you get Tyranitar into a good spot where you get that terror off, it's just really hard to deal with it, right? When you flip the charts, right? So it's a really cool strategy to use. The Garchomp is usually Sandville on Tyranitar teams, and if you add like a Bright Powder on top of that, like just missing your moves against Garchomp and it's able to hit you back for really good damage. I would consider not running Bright Powder, just run like Life Orb or something like that just to do more damage. But if you really want to go into like your opponent's missing, then you run that Bright Powder, and it's a really cool strategy because you win some games simply by them just not being able to hit Garchomp. So it's a really strong mind, and I think that Tyranitar is one of the best ways to play Garchomp. As you see, we have a few teams with Garchomp on it, right? Garchomp is kind of rising in this meta, and it's cool to kind of see it back. And it's been good since Gen 4. It kind of took like a break in the early Scarlet Violet, but now it's kind of making a comeback in this regulation. And last but not least, we have Annihilate and Mousehold. This is a really consistent core for me because while you can run the Final Gambit and Pop Bomb sets, just Mousehold plus Annihilate regular with Beat Up and Rage Fist, it's just really consistent. Your opponents has to have answers to it. They have to lead like redirection, and even if they do lead redirection, Mousehold is able to taunt them and still get the beat up off, right? And it's really oppressive and hard to deal with. And it gives you a lot of good answers into things. And if your opponent doesn't have like really good answers to this is one of the cores that can just, end the game immediately as soon as Annihilate gets set up, right? With redirection, like it's just nothing they can do. And if you have a Sinister in the back, Annihilate is able to just KO everything, right? It has very good stab coverage. Ghost hits everything except for normal types and dark types. And what hit normal types and dark types was super effective fighting type coverage, right? Which it also gets stabbed on with Drain Punch. So it's a really cool mon. It's able to hit everything, and it's just really consistent in my opinion. Next, we're going to be going to our strong cores. So these cores are just very powerful, but one of them is going to be the one we pick for to be the best core, right? But I'm going to just go through these based on what I think is really strong. I think that Garchomp and Vivian is really strong. Vivian is really cool. The Earthquake next to it. It also gives it Friend Guard. An adaptation to the meta that people have been using with Vivian is Compound Eyes with Hurricane and Sleep Powder. This gives you fast Sleep Powder. I don't think that set is that good, but I do think that Vivian with Friend Guard, allowing Garchomp to be more bulky and just click Earthquake next to it is really valuable in my opinion. It's a really strong core, and I played against it a lot, and I win against it and you lose against it. You really have to call turns right against Vivian, because Vivian can Tailwind, it can Rage Powder, it can Sleep Powder, or it can just go for attack, right? And it's very hard to guess, what Vivian's going to really want to go for that turn, because usually it's not any of his options are not always going to be the best option for that specific turn, right? Any of his options are kind of like, they all kind of like level out, whether Tailwind might be really good or even a Sleep might be really good, right? Or even just going for a Rage Powder, redirecting something away from Garchomp can be really good, right? And it's hard to like pick which one is like the worst option for them to go for. So they're always really making good plays with Vivian. And that's what I like to see in my opinion from a Pokemon that's, built on support. So it's a really good mind. And I'm excited to see it rise in this format. We're also going to put Garchomp and Dragonite up here. I think it's also a strong core. Double Dragon, you saw Paul Chua get second at the Baltimore Regionals with it. And with the adaptation with Dragonite with Lumberry, right? You're able to go for Flying Terror and just spam Terra Flying Blast and everything. And Garchomp's able to just like safely click Earthquake next to you with the Life Orb, right? The only thing that slows this duo down is like Intimidate. But if you put like a King Gambit or Annihilate on this team, then it's not easy for them to bring the Incineroar, even a Flamingo, right? Just to remove Incineroar, and then these two kind of just clean up with like Double Dragon pressure. So it's really cool in my opinion, and I think that it's a core that you really have to prepare for. Next we have Hyper Offense Typhlosion. Now this is one of the cores that took off in the beginning of the format, and I still think it's good right now, right? Just going for like fast Ursaluna and fast Typhlosion. Like I use this team is also like one of the first teams I showcased in this format, but it also had included Hisuian Braviary. It's just really strong. Like Whimsicott just setting up the Sun, setting up Tailwind, allowing these two to be very speedy, and it's pressure like super effective fire type damage, or just consistently clicking Hyper Voice and everything is just very hard to deal with. And this is the epitome of like Tailwind that you just lose if you don't have an answer in the Tailwind, right? If you don't have Trick Room or like bulky resistances or a good Terra or like your own type of speed control, then you just kind of get ran over by Hyper Offense Tailwind, and that's what this team aims to do. And there's actually a lot of teams that just aren't equipped to deal with like Tailwind. So It's a really strong strategy, and I still think it's a really good core. All right, get into our last three, right? So next I'm gonna have to go with Basculesian Rain. I think that Basculesian Rain is also very strong. It has been good since the beginning of the format, and it continues to be strong right now. Pelipper and Archaludon are a great duo. They really round out like a special attacking synergy, and then Basculesian being a physical attacker and also the speedy one just makes this core really hard to deal with. Even though Basculesian and Pelipper are both water types, Pelipper does a really good job at beating the grass and ground types that Basculesian, well, Basculesian can beat ground types too, but ground type, Archaludon doesn't like ground types, right? Basculesian doesn't like grass types, and Pelipper does a good job at beating both of those, right? Electric types are not really good into Archaludon, but they're really good in the Basculesian and Pelipper, but Archaludon can help you deal with electric type, right? And Basculesian deals with a lot of like the very fast or frail mons that want to just hit the Archaludon before it can move, and Basculesian just outspeeding them in the rain and just threatening big damage onto them before they can even move. Just complements this core so really well. So it's a really strong core, and you know I'm gonna be showcasing my version of Basculesian, Pelipper, and Archaludon soon. I did feature, you know, just a little gimmicky Dondozo, special Dondozo team in the beginning of the format, but that was just for fun. But I actually have a really consistent team that's going to be coming out where I really built like a balanced team around this, and it was really strong. I literally, you know, been winning all my games practicing with it, and I'm excited to showcase like how powerful this core can be when it's built in a way that's meant to be like balanced and consistent. So last but not least, of our strong cores, I'm gonna go ahead and have to go with the Incineroar, Amoonguss, and Porygon core. Now this core also usually features like Gholdengo, Ursaluna, and Flamingo, but right now it's really hard to deal with. The only reason that I don't think it's the best core right now is because if they do lead Porygon and Incineroar, opposing Flamingo really kind of ripped this team apart, right? Flamingo literally hits everything on that team. It hits Incineroar, Porygon, and Gholdengo for super effective damage, and Ursaluna with close combat. And then it hits opposing Flamingo and Amoonguss with Brave Bird, right? So opposing Flamingo are really a huge problem for this team, and that's really the only thing that's holding this team back, is that it's so many fighting weaknesses, and you can only Terra one mon per game, right? And Amoonguss can only redirect so much, and when you have something that can also threaten Amoonguss for super effective damage as well as the rest of the team, it allows it to have like a clear weakness, and Flamingo's rising in the format, so that kind of invalidates his team just a little bit, but it's still really strong. Like getting up Trick Room, being really bulky with this core, being able to pivot out Amoonguss and Incineroar and get like 3-4 Trick Rooms up in one match is just very devastating, and it's very hard for your opponent to survive that many turns of Trick Room, right? Porygon has like infinite healing. Ursaluna complements it well with physical damage. Gholdengo with special damage. Flamingo with just being a fast fighting type, just being able to remove other like Gholdengo, which can pressure this team a lot. And it's a really strong core. And it's not surprising to see that it was about like 4 or 5 of them in like the top 16 of the Baltimore regionals, because it's a really consistent core. But last but not least, the best core right now, in my opinion, in the format is going to be the Dragapult, Kingambit, and Sneasler. Sneasler is so freaking good. And it's funny because when the format started, everybody was saying that fighting types are not good right now. Same with Fairy, right? But Primarine has kind of been carrying a Fairy. But if you really want to talk about a Mon that's actually carried a typing, is Sneasler. Sneasler is carrying the fighting types right now. There's so many different sets you can run with Sneasler. You can run it Ghost Terra with Focus Sash, with Fake Out, and you know, Direct Claw close combat. You can run it with Dark Terror with Throat Chop to like pressure opposing Gholdengo. You can run Psychic Seed, Grassy Seed to make it like the fastest thing in the format. You can run like Flying Terror Acrobatics. You can run Rock Terror Rock Slide, and just like pressure so many things, and it just hits like everything in the format, right? Of course, you have to put the right stabs on it. Not the right stabs, the right coverage on it, because you're always going to run close combat and Direct Claw. But you do have to have the right coverage on it, whether it's going to be like dark coverage or rock coverage or flying coverage. But it has coverage in its move pool to hit everything in the format, at least for like decent damage, right? So it's a really threatening Mon. It's one of those Mons that forces out Terrors as well as Dragapult. Dragapult also does a good job at forcing out like Fairy Terrors and Steel Terrors. And they force out, if you force out a Fairy Terror against this team, then Sneasler just hits it with poison type damage, right? And then you can't really intimidate Sneasler or lead Incineroar, which would be good into these two, right? Getting Intimidate off or knock off into a Dragapult, because Kingambit's on the team. And now King Gambit gets a boost, and now it's threatening. And King Gambit boosted threatening next to one of these two is just very hard to deal with. And I know that all of these are physical, but they usually round these teams off with like you can actually round it off with like this core right here, with like a Rillaboom, Primarine, and Electabuzz. But this core is also like, you throw this 3 on any team and they're gonna really thrive. Leading Sneasler plus Dragapult is a very offensive core because you threaten Fake Out, you threaten like Dragon Darts with Dragon Terror from Dragapult, and you're just removing things, right? You're threatening Dragon Terror Outrage, and if they don't have a Fairy Terror, then you're just removing stuff from the field, or even if it's Steel type, it's still taking like 60-50% of their health. And then Sneasler's able to just pick them off from that point, right? Or even King Gambit with a Sucker Punch. So it's a really strong and powerful core, and I think it's the best core right now. Of course, as the format goes on, this is just an early season 2. We just finished season 1, so this is just a season 2, you know, tier list where I feel like these cores kind of stand in the current format. But tell me what you guys think about these cores. Do you think that this is the best core? If you don't, leave a comment below. Let me know which core you think is the strongest based on these cores that are presented for us right here. If you think it's another one of these cores, let me know and we can, you know, kind of talk about it in the comments. But this is just what I think is the best core, and you're really seeing Dragapult everywhere. And just a hint, since Dragapult is picking up so much in the format, I really think that people should start shifting to Jolly, because the Dragapult's mirrors are starting to become a lot more common, and whichever Dragapult moves first is going to KO the other Dragapult, right? It doesn't matter if it's Adamant or Jolly, you're going to be able to get that KO because Dragapult is just not that it's not that bulky. It's a really frail mon. Just think of like the Flutter Mane speed ties that used to happen in the other formats where one Flutter Mane would beat the other, whichever one's faster. It's kind of similar with these Dragapults. So even running like a Fairy Terror Dragapult to be immune to the Dragon type attacks is also a good counter for it if you just don't run Jolly. But I think Jolly is going to start to pick up because of how common Dragapult is becoming, right? And same for Sneasler. The Focus Sash set is the most common set right now, but people may start transitioning back to the Psychic Seed and the Grass Seed. The only thing is that those items kind of reveal your item early, so your opponents already know that you're going to be speedy. And the Focus Sash Sneasler with Protect allows it to play in and outside of Trick Room when it's needed, right? So that's another reason why, you know, these cores are just very hard to deal with. But that's gonna be it for this video, guys. Leave a like, subscribe, turn on those post notifications. Thank you guys for watching. Stay tuned, more videos soon. Deuces.